Welcome to the Midweek message. We're taking some lessons from the book of Ecclesiastes. We're in chapter 1, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation of the Bible. In Ecclesiastes chapter 1, we're looking at verses 5 through 8. Verse 5. The sun rises and sets and hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south and north, here and there, twisting back and forth, getting nowhere. The rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows again to the sea. Everything is so weary and tiresome. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. And that's Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 5 through 8. So let's look at them individually. Solomon is expounding on the topic that life is essentially meaningless in a way, and we're going to understand that he's speaking of being meaningless apart from God. But what he addresses in these verses is the circular nature of things, how that things happen only to happen again, and not much progress and not much change. And many times that's the way we are in our personal lives. We're frustrated about the continual cycle of life. It's like the laundry, it never stops. There's some things that are so repetitive, they get weary and tiresome, as Solomon says. And so let's look at the verses individually. What are his illustrations of this point? The sun rises and sets and hurries around to rise again. The sun comes up every day, regardless of what happens to you and I. Whether it's good or bad, at the time for us, the sun will come up tomorrow. And the world doesn't stop for us. It continues to turn. I notice that it says the sun hurries around to rise again in verse 5. Another example, verse 6. The wind blows south and north, here and there, twisting back and forth, getting nowhere. Now, Jesus likened the wind to the working of the Holy Spirit in the life, that you could see the effects of it and feel it, but you couldn't tell exactly what was going on, where it came from or where it went. And that's what Solomon is saying. He's saying, what is the wind doing? Where's it going? It seems to come from one direction and then another. And it's an example of the circular nature and the meaninglessness or apparent meaninglessness of some of the natural things. Verse 7, the rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows again to the sea. And so now he's the waters. And of course we know from watching educational television and reading and studying in school that the water in the seas runs into the ocean, it evaporates and eventually returns to the earth in rain, and sea and rivers to the oceans, and just the circular nature of life. The one thing happening over and over again. And what is the apparent progress? And so then he changes just a little bit, and after giving the illustrations and just makes the bold statement, everything is so weary and tiresome. People get weary of living, get weary of life, get weary of going to work. Sometimes they get weary of their marriages. They get tired of the house they're living in. They don't like the car that they're driving. Everything is weary and tiresome. It's a continual cycle, the cycle of life. And now he starts to talk about it from a human standpoint. No matter how much we see, we're never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. And there's an insatiable quality to people that cannot be satisfied with learning. We always want to see more. We always want to hear more, and we're never content. And so the cycle of life, the cycle of the natural world, is also at work in human beings.